The Senate elections are often neglected because many people choose to focus on the presidential race. But in today's video, we will be taking a look at the 2024 Senate elections and looking at who will win the control of the United States Senate. Now, the Democrats are facing an uphill battle. We see that Republicans start off with 38 seats who are not up for re-election, and that Democrats only have 28 seats who are not up for re-election. In other terms, Republicans are defending just 11 seats, while Democrats are defending 23. That math makes it look incredibly difficult for Democrats to actually win the Senate. Furthermore, the generic ballot doesn't look too friendly for the Democrats. Though both parties are nowhere near 50% in polling, we do see that Republicans are slightly ahead of Democrats, albeit by just 0.2%. Now, it is important to note here that polling is not always accurate, and that the states up for and that really the generic ballot does factor in states up that are not up for re-election in the Senate races. Nevertheless, it does not look too good for Democrats who want to control the Senate. Now, first off, let's fill in the Democratic safe states here. We do have the states of Washington, California. Adam Schiff won a heated primary against Katie Porter, and it will be Schiff who will be the next senator of California. We also see the states of New York, Maryland, Delaware. I'm going to leave New Jersey out right now. We're going to have Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Vermont, and we're also going to see Maine. The state of Vermont is held by Bernie Sanders. The state of Maine is held by Angus King, but they are essentially Democrats because they vote for pretty much all Democratic legislation. Now going to the Republicans here, we have the states of Wyoming, North Dakota, the Nebraska regular election as well as the special one. We do have the states of Missouri, Tennessee, Indiana, Mississippi, which are in the safe Republican column. We also see the state of Utah, also in the safe Republican column. So that gets Democrats to 38 seats and Republicans to 47. Republicans are at most 4 seats away from Senate control, while Democrats are at least 12 if they win the presidential election, which right now also don't look too friendly for them. Also, I forgot Hawaii. Now here we do see that I'm going to fill in some of the likely states for Democrats here. We could see probably Virginia in the safe Democratic column. I do think that Tim Kaine will probably win by 12, considering he performed quite well there in 2018. Now, the next state here we're going to be taking a look at is the state of New Mexico. New Mexico voted for Democrats there by an impressive margin. Martin Henrich, the incumbent Democrat, is quite strong, and Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate for the state in 2018, as well as the Libertarian presidential candidate in 2016, took away more than 100,000 votes from the race. Most of those voters would have likely voted for the Republicans. Now here we do see that Martin Henrich will probably win, but I doubt it's going to be by a safe margin in a presidential year where it's not as favorable as it was for Democrats in 2018. And I don't think Biden's going to do that well in the state. I do think, however, Martin Henrich will probably overperform the Democratic Party in the state on the presidential level. Now going to the state of New Jersey. This is a state where I do believe that the Democrats will underperform Joe Biden's performance. The reason is very simple. The incumbent Democrat is Robert Menendez, who is not the most popular. He is indicted on several counts and faces dozens of years behind bars. He went to trial back I believe 2018. It was a hung jury. 10 jurors found him not guilty. 2 jurors found him guilty. However, this time on separate charges with new evidence related to a different case. Robert Menendez has decided he will not seek re-election, thus leaving the seat open. And generally, when we have an open race, it looks like Andy Kim will probably win the Democratic primary, though there's still some time before the state actually votes. Generally, if you have a non-incumbent, because the incumbent was ousted for some reason like this, it does not look too good for the incumbent party. Now, New Jersey is very blue, but nonetheless, I think that Democrats will win by closer to 10, a comparable margin to New Mexico, as opposed to perhaps 15%. Now, going to the next state that will be likely for the Democratic Party, the state of Minnesota. Amy Klobuchar is extremely popular. As you can see that by the county map right here, we see that pretty much Biden lost all of these Republican-leading counties, but we saw that Amy Klobuchar won the state by 24. He won more than 60% of the vote. That is just extremely impressive for a Democrat in such a competitive race. If anything, she's probably going to help Joe Biden on the presidential level. But again, this is a presidential year. We do see split ticket voting be much less common in such a divided political environment. I do think that she'll win, but probably by closer to 10 points as opposed to her blowout 24% victory over the Republican candidate. Now that pretty much wraps up for the likely Democratic states. For the likely Republican states, first off we have Florida. This could very well be a safe state. In fact, I do think that Marco Rubio will do very, very well in this. Rick Scott will do very, very, very well in this state. He defeated Bill Nelson, which was a surprise back in 2018. Polling and political pundits consistently believed that Bill Nelson was going to edge this one out, but Rick Scott ultimately won. I think that he's not as strong of a candidate, but that he'll still be able to easily win by probably between 10 to 12 points on the verge of a safe margin. Now going to Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz did quite well. Did quite poorly actually against Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke made this race pretty competitive. He lost by just 215,000 votes. In a state that at the time wasn't so competitive. However, Ted Cruz this time faces a much weaker Democratic challenger, and as of right now, I just don't see how Democrats could possibly make this race in play. I think it will be closer to 12 points, but still it's going to be in the likely Republican column. Now going to West Virginia, Joe Manchin is not running for re-election. The reason I didn't put this as safe beforehand was because of the fact I wanted to talk about the state. But even in 2018, without the presidential election year factor, Joe Manchin won the state by 3. He did not secure a majority of the vote against Patrick Morrisey, who most people thought really was not going to end up actually winning. And that really in 2024, even if he ran, I doubt he would have actually won the state, with Joe Biden and Donald Trump's race being on the ballot. I do think that right now, Joe Manchin, even if he run again, I do not think he's going to win. And against a generic Democrat, the Republicans will easily win the state of West Virginia by probably closer to 20 to 30 points, if not in the high 30s. Now going to some of the other states here, I do believe that now going to the lead and tilt states, I'm going to start off with the state of Nevada. Before we get back to the video here, I just want to say that 97% of you are not subscribed. Be sure to subscribe for more election predictions content. And also, please consider joining my memberships if you really like my videos. They're really cheap, so just go and get it. You get all these perks, and you also get more elections content. Now back to the video. So for the state of Nevada here, we do see Jackie Rosen defeated Dean Heller, the Republican incumbent at the time, by 5 points. The race was labeled a toss-up, and many people had this as 50-50. Now, Dean Heller was not the strongest incumbent, and also this was a much better year for Democrats in terms of the generic ballot. They won the House by 8, and just keep in mind the generic ballot polling right now is tied. Nevertheless, I do think that Jackie Rosen, as the incumbent with that incumbency advantage, and also with the fact that really Democrats, she did quite well in Washoe County, and she also did quite well here in Clark County. I just think that those factors combined will ultimately help her win the state. And also the rural areas in the state have a relatively insignificant and negligible population. That's how Democrats generally win. Now, a problem for Jackie Rosen would be that the fact that Biden's probably not going to win the state of Nevada, and that some of the trends are not looking too good for the Democratic Party. And with split ticket voting becoming increasingly rare, that could be a problem for Jackie Rosen. At this point, I don't think there's a viable Republican who will be able to take down her, and I do think that she'll probably win that race by a tilt margin. Now going to the state of Montana here. So Jon Tester is a relatively strong incumbent. We have seen a couple of polls here that put this race as quite competitive. However, if we look at the 2018 performance and the fact that this is a presidential election year, I do have a lot of doubt around whether Jon Tester will actually win. First off, in 2018, in a much better year for Democrats, and when split ticket voting was still comparably quite common, we saw that Jon Tester only won by 3.5%. He was in a fight for his life the first day he stepped in office. He has never won by that impressive of a margin like Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin won his first election by 25 points. Jon Tester won his first election by about 3 points, just like he did in 2018. The generic ballot for 2024 don't look too good for Democrats. And really, there's a lot of rural areas in the state. There's the presidential race, and Joe Biden has no chance of actually winning Montana or even getting within 10 points. All those factors combined with the fact that Matt Rosendale, he didn't do that well in the campaign. Republicans also kind of gave up on him because the polling suggested he was also going to lose. And really, in general, Republicans didn't put that much effort in 2018. They could easily win the race in 2024. And just with the fact that this is such a red state, it is looking very unlikely that Democrats, in my opinion at least, will end up winning. I think they'll be very close. I think that Tester will lose by around 3%. Pretty much conversely to what his performance in 2018. But I do think that ultimately Republicans will be able to flip the race in the state of Montana. Now going to the state of Arizona here. Arizona is also a very close one here. Kristen Sinema won with about exactly 50% of the vote against Martha McSally, who is not the strongest Republican. Now Kristen Sinema is now an independent. A Democrat and a Republican will compete for the race. Kristen Sinema will probably not do too much in this race. And really, this is a very interesting one. Again, the generic ballot is not looking too good for Democrats. And when we have a Democrat who ended up switching to a independent, that is relatively concerning for the Democratic Party. That I think the Republicans have a great shot of actually flipping the state. Furthermore speaking, again, it really depends on who they end up nominating. There's a lot of races that the Republican Party could end up. There's a lot of candidates the Republicans could end up nominating. If it's a more moderate Republican, then I think the Republican Party has a greater chance. If it's a more, Trumpy type of candidate, then Democrats have a greater chance in general. However, with all factors being considered, the fact that, again, Biden's not doing too well, his approval rating is dismal, I do believe that, ultimately speaking, Republicans have a narrow edge in the state of Arizona, though this race is very, very close. Now going to the state of Wisconsin. Now, the state of Wisconsin here is also a relatively close race. We do see that in 2018, we saw that Tammy Baldwin won by nearly 11%. Again, Republicans gave up on that race back in 2018. I think they have a greater shot of actually winning, and I think that the Democrats, they aren't going to do as well as they did in 2018, that's for sure, with the presidential election, with Biden polling very poorly in all 3 Rust Belt states and in the nation, and with his approval rating being pretty much at a record low. I do believe that this race will be a lot closer. Nonetheless, if Trump wins the state by about 2 points, it's very easy to see how Tammy Baldwin could end up winning. First off, he had a very strong appeal on Ron Kyne's district back in he did not seek re-election back in 2022, but this is pretty much Ron Kyne's district. This was a district where Biden pretty much lost most of these counties by 10-15 points. She was able to win most of these counties by 10-15 points. We look at the wild counties. She actually didn't do that well in the wild counties, but she did quite well for a Democrat at that time. And also the rural areas, you can see that she barely lost in a lot of these rural regions. Biden lost some of these rural counties by 25 points. She lost some of them by about 5. And also she did very well around the Kenosha-Rashid County region, and she was able to drive up turnout in a lot of these areas surrounding Madison. She is generally a very strong candidate. She should be able to win the state of Wisconsin by probably a lead margin. Now going to the state of Michigan. Michigan, we saw a very strong uncommitted movement. About 13% of the voters in the state rejected Joe Biden. However, I don't think that's going to have much of an impact for Democrats down ballot. Debbie Stabenow did the worst out of these 3 candidates. Tammy Baldwin, Debbie Stabenow, and also Bob Casey. Now, the thing about this is that Stabenow, she's still a relatively strong candidate. She did very well for Kent County at the time, where Democrats essentially never win Kent. She also did quite well with Macomb County, especially a county that Joe Biden lost in 2020 by about 7, but also a county but he also won the state in general. Furthermore speaking, she did relatively well in the rural areas. Again, this was a good election for Democrats in terms of the generic ballot, but I do believe that ultimately, when all is considered, Debbie Stabenow should be able to win the state of Michigan. This state is generally the bluest out of the 3 Rust Belt states, and that ultimately Biden has the best shot of winning Michigan out of all 3 states. So I do think that Debbie Stabenow should be able to win the state of Michigan. Now going to the state of Pennsylvania here. Pennsylvania, Bob Casey is a very strong candidate. Lou Barletta was a very poor choice for the Republicans. Again, Republicans gave up on him. He was obviously not going to win the race, and he was not even going to come close according to most estimates, right? Bob Casey was able to win Berks County. Biden lost the county by about 10%. He also won the county of Beaver. Again, Biden lost the county by about 17%. Think about that. Also, Bob Casey, again, you can see that Republicans still did very well in the most of the rural counties in the state, but that Trump was able to get about 80% of the vote in some of these rural regions, right? Lou Barletta got about 65% in some of these counties. And that was not a good performance there for the Republican Party. You see that, again, some of these counties, for example, Chester County voted for Biden by about 7, voted for Bob Casey by about 20 points. These are all counties where Bob Casey was able to do very, very well. And also, generally speaking, Democratic turnout was quite high in the state, and that Republicans were disengaged to vote for Lou Barletta. In the presidential election year, certainly Bob Casey will not win by 13 points, but I do think that any Republican who ends up running in this race will not be able to win against such a strong incumbent. And in general, even if, for example, Trump wins the state against Biden by 2-3%, there's going to be enough split ticket voting for the Democrats to hang on to this race. The question is, how much split ticket voting will there be? Ultimately, I do think Democrats will be able to win the state of Pennsylvania again by a lead margin. Now going to the state of Ohio. Ohio voted for Sherrod Brown against Jim Renacci by about 7 points, which you could say is a pretty good result. However, there were polling in the race that suggested that James Renacci was going to be losing by 15 points. This was a state that Republicans never fought because they thought they had no shot. Now, if James Renacci actually campaigned against Sherrod Brown, would he have won? Probably not, but he would have made the race a lot closer. And do keep in mind that the generic ballot on the House level was about Democrat plus 8, and that Sherrod Brown won the race by just under 7. He did worse than the national environment, and when the generic ballot is not so favorable for Democrats, when split ticket voting is a lot less common, when there's a presidential election race where Trump is expected to destroy Biden in the state, probably by at least 55-45, a 10-point margin, is Sherrod Brown still able to win the state? Now, I think that there's a very real possibility that he wins. He did very well in some of these counties. Up here, these were some of the Obama, Biden, Trump counties. Pretty much, Biden pretty much lost all these counties. Hillary Clinton, I believe, won Lorain County, and Biden essentially lost the county back in 2020. Sherrod Brown won the county by 20. Right? We see a lot of these rural counties. These were areas, the areas that I'm pointing to right now, they voted for Trump by at least a 2-1 margin. However, Sherrod Brown only lost some of these counties here by about 10 to 15 points. And again, will he be able to maintain that performance? I really doubt it. He won the race by about 300,000 votes, but Democrats are going to lose and drop in their percentage in a lot of these regions. Ultimately speaking, I do believe that the Democratic Party will end up losing the state of Ohio in the presidential race by at least 10 points. And I think that Sherrod Brown will see some crossover support because he is the incumbent and that he's still a relatively popular incumbent, but it's not going to be good enough for Democrats to win the state. And ultimately, I do believe that the Republicans will flip the state of Ohio by a lead margin. There we have it, Democrats at 47 races to the Republicans at 53. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.